Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Writers Chat. We are so glad to have you with us, whether you're here in our community live or you're watching the replay. My name is Johnny Alexander, and I am joined by my co-host Brandy Bro and Melissa Stroh. And I'm going to turn it over to Brandy, who's going to introduce our special guest.
Yes, I have the extra special privilege of introducing you to our guest this morning. She is a friend that I consider a good friend and somebody that I really enjoy. And she is somebody who has a fantastic writer's journey that she's going to share with us today. Her name is Sophia L. Hansen. Sophia is an author and editor with Enclave Publishing and loves to write in other worlds. She's lived on a tiny island in Alaska, the bustling cities of New York and Boston, raised kids in Tennessee, and now resides just outside Birmingham, Alabama. After 30 plus years of marriage, 7 children, and numerous pets, Sophia still fits into her high school earrings. So funny. I don't have any more of my high school earrings. And you can follow Sophia's Words and Worlds at sophialhansen.com on Facebook and Instagram. Sophia, we're so glad you've come to talk to us today about your writer's journey.
Thank you so much, Brandy and Johnny and Melissa and Jean, everybody. It's an honor to be here. And I thank you for inviting me. And I just hope that my words encourage others. I call my writing journey a series of encouragements. It began in 1963 as a reading journey, because I'm really not that old. Specifically, my mom read to me. That might not seem like a big deal, but when English is not your mother's first language, there are challenges to overcome. And she didn't let them stop her. Her love for her children motivated my mom to do the hard things. And as a result, she instilled in us a love for God, for his word, and for words. In fact, my mom ended up writing down her story as an autobiography. And she gave me my first editing gig when I was in high school. So I started caring about how words were presented and seeing how they could be improved at that time. Later on in college, I ended up editing for my friends for food. They would give me their papers. I would type them, I would edit them, correct their spelling, and they would pay for dinner or $3 a page. I'd take it. After that, eventually got married, had kids, and I was busy. I was slammed. We had 5 kids within 1 decade, and I didn't have much time for anything else. In fact, I even consciously gave up reading for pleasure because once I start a book, I don't typically put it down. And I was not worth much as a mother, as a homeschooler, or anything the next day if I was reading till 4 a.m. So I hadn't read or done anything but work on focusing on my kids for about 15 years. Then a friend invited me to write for our church's Christmas program. And I had no idea why she would ask me to write and present something. And my pastor's wife, Kim Thomas, said, it's because you love words. And I didn't even know that. I didn't know that I loved words. But once she spoke it, I knew it was true. So I wrote my first piece on peace, of all things. And it's still one that I revisit. I've chopped it up, edited it down, but my favorite line is that there are people whose lives could be described as peaceful, people who have glass ornaments on their trees. And at that time, I was not one of them. And then I talked about peace like a river and how wild rivers are. So that was the beginning of my writing. I started writing blogs every once in a while. I called my little blog space Thoughts from the HOV lane, because that's what I could drive with my suburban / excursions full of my kids and their friends. And then in the summer of 2008, a friend invited me to a Bible study at her house. Now, I've been a believer most of my life, and I've loved diving into the Word of God. But once I started having kids, a lot of opportunities closed for me. I was kind of a natural parent. I preferred to not nursery kids who were miserable the whole time. And so I ended up spending a lot of time in the church playground or tag teaming with my husband. Most retreats and Bible studies did not welcome nursing babies or active toddlers. So I didn't have an opportunity to feed that part of my world for a long time. I prayed throughout the day, and I prayed a lot, but I didn't have an opportunity to fellowship one-on-one and really dive in and share my heart or hear others share their hearts. But my friend, who was also a homeschooling mom, shared with me the opportunity to do the Beth Moore study, A Woman's Heart, God's Tabernacle. And she said, all kids are welcome. She was a homeschooler too. And they just played and wandered in and out at will. And this fed my soul. And for the first time, my heart was able to be poured out in words. And in the middle of that study, I was able to write what my husband calls a hymn. I call it the bride's anthem, Now and Not Yet. But it was like a 4-page poem. I'm not going to share that here, but I was able to express and think and meditate on the truths God was revealing to me. That summer of 2008 started things. This was the summer that I walked along a little blacktop road between our property and the farm behind us. We had a horseless corral on our side, and our neighbor had cows. So I'd take the kids for walks along that little road between our worlds, and we would talk to the cows. There were drop-offs here and there, and sometimes a bit of river would appear along the path. A thought struck me. What if someone fell in the water but didn't fight it? What if they accepted the water and it healed their lungs somehow and made them whole? What if they discovered they could breathe underwater? What if it wasn't water that suffocated them, but fear? Those were my what ifs, but I never spoke them. I didn't even write them, because my other what if was, what if some kid read my words and decided to try this? And that was a scary thought for a mother. So, but I kind of pondered these things. 2008 was also the year that my mother passed into glory, and the year that we decided to move from Franklin. We'd lived in Tennessee for our entire marriage up to that point, and raised and had kids there. But now it was time to move. And in October, I heard about NaNoWriMo as I was moving. So guess what I did that November? I was homeschooling 5 kids, traveling between Nashville and Birmingham every weekend, but I tried NaNoWriMo anyway. I modified the goals a bit. I'm not that crazy. But I set a goal of 10%. 5,000 words seemed reasonable for my world. I joined my first critique group through NaNoWriMo, and I shared my words with other writers for the first time. It was terrifying, but I survived, and I was hooked. I joined NaNoWriMo every year thereafter, and even though I knew I couldn't hit the 50,000 word goal, I just wanted to make space to write. just once a year. I started a lot of projects in November's, a robot story, a vampire story, and a continuation of Water's Edge. Then my friend, Sandra Lovelace, who also let me know about Writers Chat, invited me to attend the Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference. I'd never spent money on my writing before. It seemed so self-indulgent. After all, I was just a mom, a homeschooling mom, a busy mom. But I started to dream a little. I registered for the conference and then realized I had no idea what I was doing. So I bought a Ted Decker writing course and listened to it for the whole drive from Birmingham to Asheville. When I arrived, I realized that everyone else had business cards. One panic call later, my graphic artist son and internet guru husband assured me that I would have them before the end of the conference. I hadn't read for myself in years, but a new world opened up for me. Authors and editors and agents, oh my. I met superstars at Blue Ridge. Tosca Lee, Aaron Gansky, Bethany Jett, Robin Luftig in fuzzy bunny slippers, I might add. I met a nice man in the cafeteria line who asked me how I was enjoying the conference. I told him it was overwhelming, terrifying, and exhilarating. He told me it would all make sense in time and not to let the stress get to me. That turned out to be Steve Lobby. I made appointments, clueless in every way, but was going to take advantage of every opportunity. There was an open night mic, so I read. I shopped at the bookstore and asked questions. Sherilyn Bisbana was there, and she told me that I might like a group called Realm Makers. But I couldn't imagine going to another writers' conference. I've kicked myself for that decision ever since. I had another appointment near the end of the conference. I was exhausted, and the person I was meeting with looked exhausted as well. He told me very bluntly that my story didn't have enough conflict or a strong enough antagonist. It wasn't a story. I was crushed. That meeting eclipsed every good thing that I'd experienced. I felt stupid for wasting all that time and money on the conference. Another new friend, Kelly Goshorn, took one look at me and put her arm around my shoulders. I sobbed my story and she prayed with me. I didn't have much more hope, but I no longer felt like a complete failure. I breathed this prayer at the end of the day. God, just let someone professional say something positive if I'm supposed to pursue this writing business. At the end of the conference, I couldn't remember where I parked, so I walked back and forth along the hallways, pushing my luggage cart, trying not to look stupid again. A cluster of faculty were sitting in the middle lobby area, the cool kids. It was my fifth pass when one came over, Aaron Gansky. He remarked on my reading from the open mic and invited me to send my story when it was finished. That one moment of encouragement bolstered my spirits for the next 3 months. Enough to realize that the blunt critique I received wasn't wrong, just poorly expressed, or at least insensitively. So I started from that prologue I'd read and built a world where the people could not only breathe underwater, but would eventually forget that they came from the water. By the time I had finished writing, Aaron's situation had changed and he was unable to commit to any sort of mentoring, but that was okay. His words, when needed, spoke life into my writing dreams. The next year I went to Realm Makers. I'd been following them on Facebook and was eager to join their fray. I'd heard about a contest Havoc was running, but had forgotten to submit my idea in time. When I mentioned it to the people at the Havoc table, Lisa Godfrey said, "Why don't you turn it in for open mic night?" That seemed to be my magic word. I worked and workshopped that idea at a Blue Ridge Mountainside novel retreat, at Spark, at a local and inaugural UAB-sponsored writing festival, and in my critique groups. Anywhere I had a chance to get feedback on my story, I welcomed it. and they took it. I signed my first publishing contract and was ecstatic. I doubled down on ecstasy when mine was tapped for the print anthology. This was the beginning of my relationship with the Havoc Hive. I learned to submit on time and use strange things like track changes. When they sent their very nice "thank you for submitting to us, but" responses, I took their edits seriously and worked to improve what I sent in. If they didn't say, "we don't want this," I kept trying. I finally began to understand what I'd learned about things like POV, show don't tell, and dialogue tags. These strange terms made more sense in the field. A few years later, Havoc asked for volunteers, and I jumped at the chance to serve the team that had been so good to me. Joining the Havoc editing team taught me to write even tighter, helped me to understand the importance of a good hook and a satisfying ending, and it encouraged me to look for what was right in a draft. Last year, Norma asked me to write for Almost an Author's monthly science fiction and fantasy column. It was intimidating, but I was almost an author, and this would let me share what I'd learned along the way. Shameless plug, my latest article posted this morning at almostanauthor.com. A few years later, my nano project was to finish editing. A few years after I started my project, it was to finish editing The Waters Break. And the intro to my then titled series, The Way of Water. Apparently, James Cameron has more juice than I, and when he decides he likes the title, he wins. But I did it. I was finally ready to pitch, and my pitches were well received. But then life happened, and I was unable to follow through with the invitations to submit. I stumbled through a year of grief and then submitted again, and mostly receiving responses along the lines of, "I like your story, but it's not right for our company or our audience." And then I didn't hear back from one publisher at all. So I tried again this past summer and remarked that this was the third time I had pitched this story to Steve Lobby. When I told him I hadn't heard back, he thought that it might have been lost in a software glitch they'd had. They didn't know what they didn't receive, and so Steve invited me to submit again. I wanted to give my manuscript one more thorough review, but my husband counseled me. While you're obsessing over word choices, Steve is preparing to offer someone else a contract. So I cleaned it up to make it look professional, but didn't stop at every editing opportunity, because as it turns out, those are unlimited. I received an email back 1 month after I submitted my manuscript, asking if I was still interested in publishing with them. Was I? Ironically, the email came the day after tragedy struck our family for a second time, leaving me with emotional whiplash, but thankful for a ray of light through our storm. And now I'm prepping for things like cover reveals and a release in January 2023. Having heard over and over that my story wasn't right for their audience, I've decided to bring other science fiction authors into the forefront. And I started a Discord book club for science fiction authors. I've never done that before either, in case you've recognized that theme, but I'm willing to try. That went a lot faster than I expected. What I will say is, I call this a series of encouraging incidents because we need encouragement and we need to give encouragement. And one is Miss Frizzle to this year's Railmakers, and her motto is take chances, make mistakes, and get messy. And just for a couple of words of advice, be encouraged and be encouraging. Along the way, different people have spoken words that I didn't realize were true. And because I received them, emboldened me to go to the next step. Give others the benefit of the doubt, as well as the grace you'd like to receive. Receive your critiques and criticisms wisely, but don't take them to heart. And if someone offers you a chance to try something you're not sure you're ready for, don't let fear stop you. So I don't know if anybody wants me to elaborate or has any questions, but that is my journey in a nutshell, which is the perfect place for a nut.
I love that, Sophia. Thank you so much for sharing. I was taking notes for the YouTube thing, so that I can write up the little blurb when we put the video up. But so just some different things that really popped out for me in your story is that there's this private journey, and I kind of hesitate to use the word journey, but this private movement and also this public movement. So you were doing things like NaNoWriMo and just this personal things, and that was you. But then there's this whole public thing where you're going out into the conferences and the networking. And I just want everyone to see, I know conferences can be expensive, and it's a time thing. It's years. It's not months. It's not weeks. It's years. But the steps that Sophia has taken as far as joining the writing community broadly and narrowly, like she's part of Writers Chat, and we're so happy to have her here. And she's also then part of her niche market, and she's volunteering. And then as she does things, more opportunities present themselves. And now she's helping other authors. And so there's opportunities there to become part of the writing community, to volunteer. It's kind of like paying your dues, but I don't even like to say that, because what you're doing is making friends, you're learning, you're growing. And there's just so much I could comment, and I won't, because I don't want to just go on and repeat what you're saying, but I just love the things that you had to say, and congrats to you for sticking with it, not giving up, facing those fears, which that's hard for me, overcoming the negativity. And there was comments in the chat, one negative thing, we're done. And it's so hard. Just thank you for just sticking in there, and congrats to you, because it paid off.
I will mention that Writers Chat helped form my writing philosophy. I just come back from Blue Ridge, and my friend Sandra was on, and she told me about it, and I was like, oh, could I join? I'm not an author. I'm not an official writer yet, but I'd love to learn. And she asked permission, and I was given permission to join. And you guys were so generous with your advice, with your encouragement, always welcoming. And that helped form an image of what I wanted to be as a person, welcoming, encouraging, sharing what I learned, and not afraid to ask questions. So thank you for letting me in so early, and for being a presence that I can share with the writing community. I plug you often on my columns on Almost an Author, just because I think it's so important that we have community. We need a little community, a very tight circle of the people that we can scream at and cry with and dump our fears and frustrations on. And we need a little bigger community where we can ask questions and take chances and see how strangers react to our stuff. And we need to not be afraid to go out into the world, because for the most part, the world welcomes voices. And they're not going to, the voices that are negative are usually few and far between. It's just, they seem to be louder.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Brandy, Melissa, you want to jump in, add anything?
I wanted to comment. If those of us that are here and listening might have caught something that I know about Sophia, and that's that she has You have, Sophia, a very teachable spirit. And more than once, I have heard you say, I don't know what I don't know.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I think that right there contributes largely to the way your journey has gone and the doors that have opened up to you, because you've opened yourself up to be taught and to learn more. You know, when we think we know things, we close ourselves off to new opportunities. Do you want to talk a little bit about that aspect of your writing?
Sure. When I was in college, I was deeply involved in college ministry, and they always taught us the importance of being fat, faithful, available, and teachable. So that was the beginning of that learning lesson. I also learned to fake it. In a sense, I was asked to do outreach ministry, to call up, to do follow-up is what we called it back in the 80s. And that was to just blind call, well, not blind call, but call people who had signed up or shown an interest. And so I did that. And there was this one girl I had to follow up with. This is at Boston University. And she was really, really beautiful. And she always looked together, and she was just so cool. She looked like she could have been on a Vogue magazine, and I was pretty much a spaz all the time. I was also very insecure. I was a complete introvert as a high schooler, or up to high school. I was afraid to raise my head. And I decided to not do that when I was in college. I decided that if I was this miserable, maybe somebody else was just as miserable, and I would look for that person and we could encourage each other. And so I girded up my strength, and I called this person, and I would invite her to monthly fellowship meetings and Bible studies and Sundays. And she always said no. Eventually, she started coming, and she told me several years later, "Thank you for not always inviting me. I was always so scared to go, but you were so welcoming, and you never gave up on me." I had no clue. I thought she thought I was just obnoxious and annoying, but she needed that encouragement. She, the one who looked beautiful, the one who was everything I wasn't, cool and awesome, she was terrified in the same ways that I was, but it just looked different. So I realized that I needed to not let the voices in my head that told me not to do things overcome the opportunities to shed life and shed light. I ended up marrying a guy from Berkeley. He was a drummer and a production engineer at the time, and we moved down to Nashville, and I heard a lot of stories from the inside of the studio. Over and over again, I heard about people saying, God gave me this song. And the joke was that God was a terrible songwriter because these people who were probably truly inspired were not willing to take any feedback and change what they had brought into the studio. They weren't willing to, in their minds, compromise, but it was actually polish their work. And so they didn't get opportunities to share what God had given them with the outside world because they slammed the door at the first instance. Yeah, I just caught that, Catherine. Yes, God is the worst literary agent ever. But I resolved to not have that attitude when I started to enter the writing world. I said, I am not going to tell somebody that God gave me the story and I can't change it. I am going to learn and polish and grow. And I think that attitude has served me well. Thanks for reminding me of that. And I love that. Yes, I don't know what I don't know. And it's true for all of us. Even professionals, they don't know what they don't know because this world is changing. Who knows Discord? I'm barely understanding what is it? Substack is. It's a new thing.
Yeah.
But I'm checking it out. because it's new and we need to not be afraid of what's new.
That's true. That's true. I also want to go back to a comment that Rhonda Dragomir put in the chat about trusting God's timing. And again, I mean, you really dealt with that in tremendously tragic ways that most of us would not experience once, let alone twice. And I don't even know what to say about that, Sophia, except a lot of trust, I suppose, a lot of faith, and a lot of just holding on.
Well, I believe that God is in control. I believe that God is both sovereign and loving, and nothing goes on without him knowing. He doesn't cause all the evil in this world, but he will help. He will not leave us in the middle of it, and he will walk us through it, and he will work it for something good. We just have to trust that. I honestly think that had my first submissions been sent in on the schedule I expected, that I might not have gotten this contract, because my third submission to Enclave and to Steve was timed right after they had been purchased by Oasis and were expanding to have a YA imprint and adding the number of stories they put out per year. I don't know that my story would have fit into their lineup, because it's stellar. I know that we have an Enclave author here, at least one. And I am just amazed at what they put out. And I had sort of resigned myself to, it's okay if they don't look at me, because they've got great stories and I don't know that I could fit into their 12 slots. But now they're opening it up. They're doubling, maybe going more than that. And I'll share. I mean, well, it was hard. It was hard. And I am thankful for the writing communities that I have walked into. Blue Ridge and Writers Chat and Realm Makers and Havoc. I'm probably leaving some out. But these communities have been encouraging. They have not viewed other writers as competition to step on, but as peers to help each other up. And they have the philosophy that a rising tide raises all ships. And I'm so thankful that God brought me into this writing world. I have participated in a few events outside of these that I've named that have been, once again, devastating. I have received critiques that have made me not look at words for a month or two. I've been devastated by those professional responses. But that's why you have to have your good friends, the people you can cry with and pray with. The other thing I will share about the writing journey is be persistent. I have gotten to this point, well, the grace, the strength, and the favor of God, and for his reasons and his purposes, but also because I didn't give up. I had a lot of opportunities to throw in towels, so many towels, terrible towels, good towels, guest towels. I wanted to so many times, but I didn't. My children encouraged me. My husband encouraged me. My friends encouraged me. My writing critique members encouraged me. And so I didn't. I decided to trust their voices more than my fears. And it's something that has, again, served me well. I've learned every step of the way. I posted, Norma posted my article on Almost an Author on comparing the writing journey to learning a video game. And I've just started playing this new game called, it's an old game. It's called Dwarf Fortress, but it's just been released on Steam. And my husband said, I had to try it. I like it. It's a lot of work. But they said losing is fun. And I decided to requote that as, if at first you don't succeed, look how much you've learned. And so I will say that to each author out there. If at first you don't succeed, look how much you've learned. Take that lesson into your next attempt and don't give up.
That's great advice. Great advice. I also really loved what your husband told you about sending in the manuscript. It's like,
He was right.
that's brilliant, though. It's like, well, yeah.
I'm a firm believer in listening to the voices God has placed in my life. Not if they're negative, less so if they're negative, more so if they challenge me to do things I don't want to do. And my husband has a lot of good business sense that I don't have. And I don't necessarily want to go with his inclinations, but every time I do, it's a good idea.
Yeah. Wow. Hi, Jeannie. You want to say something?
I've been here, yeah, but I've been kind of behind the scenes because I was sorry I was late. But Sophia, you used a phrase towards the end when you were starting to ask questions that just got me, and it was your writer's philosophy. And I just think what a neat way to think about it, that if each of us would write our story, our journey out, and discover those nuggets of wisdom within our journey that become foundations, then we don't get so distracted with these ups and downs and rejections and acceptance and the unknowns and the uncertainties. We just know this is the truth, and a lot of that's our faith too. But you want to talk a little bit more about your writer's philosophy? I love that concept. It's like I said, it's foundational, I think.
Well, back in college, I used to be called the analogy meister, because what I used to love to do is explain biblical truths in ways that the people in my Bible study or in my fellowship group or my roommates could relate. I had a wonderful opportunity to be a roommate with a young woman who had become a Christian just that summer. And I had met her along that journey, and we decided to be roommates. And it was great. We got to have so many late night talks answering her questions. But that's where I started taking what I learned and translating it. I felt that, my mind doesn't go to the normal places. My mind thinks about, when I think of a love story, I think about the Frog Prince, but I make it the humans that want to transform back into frogs. They're cursed by being humans, and they work in a coffee shop. That's where my mind goes. I think about, what is the caterpillar's journey? I think about, the first story I had published was about a golem, because we had this contest, write a song based on music from this decade. And the first one was the 50s. And I thought, ooh, what about a song based on Earth Angel? What if the Earth Angel was a golem and it was a guardian? I know that's not normal, but I get used to not normal. But I have noticed, and I have noticed as I've unpacked my stories and I've paid attention to other people's writing and their stories, that I'm often writing about overcoming fear and not taking appearances for granted. And I think the theme, not intentional, but that has grown out of my water story, is that it's fear that will kill us. Not the circumstances, not the physical attacks, but the fear. And I want people to be free from the control that fear has on us. I love that verse. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. Upon those dwelling in the valley of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. That's the opening for one of my vampire stories. And they're not pretty, nice vampires. They don't sparkle. My tagline on that is, these are not your sister's vampires. But for me, the vampire represents sin and its desire to devour, consume, and that it will lie, cheat, and steal to get its hold on you. But I like to take truth, and I like to communicate it in a way that's relatable. And if anyone ever tells anybody that writing fiction isn't a worthy endeavor for a believer, I will say that Jesus told fiction. And his fictions changed people's lives. And when David, the king, was challenged on sin, he was not approached with cold, hard truth, but he was approached with a story that captured his heart and allowed the truth to enter in. So tell your stories. Tell them in whatever way God gives them to you. Bob Hostetler at my very first Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference said, God has given you a story that no one else can tell. And that truth has encouraged me over the years. My stories might not be whatever, but only I can tell them because God gave them to me. So God gave you your stories.
Stories are powerful, and reflecting, which is kind of what you've done for us today, reflecting on your story. And I always say it's our story within God's story, and it's like that's where you see the truth, the wisdom, the foundations to get us through those ups and downs. That's why I think it's a challenge for each of us to kind of write out like what you did today and share with, I think it'd be healthy for each of us in a number of ways. Write our own writer's journey out of that. So that's great. So thank you. Thank you for today. Yeah. Where are we on questions?
Well, I wondered, do you want to just have everybody come on? We've got about 15 more minutes. And then, Sophie, did you have something you wanted to say, or?
I'd love to see everybody's faces, even though I'll glance back because I'm on the camera.
Let's get everybody on, and then if anyone has something that they want to comment on the recording, just do remember we are recording. You can do that.
I commented in the chat, but I don't know if Sophia was able to see it. I think it was after her first conference at Ridgecrest or Blue Ridge. We had met, Sophia and I met there. And I don't remember if it was the next year or a couple years later, her and I met at a friend of mine's house in the mountains. And we spent 5 days together just writing and encouraging each other in a house that had no internet. So we would have to go to town to get internet and write and research. And then we sat there that Thursday night and listened to the award ceremony or watched it online. That was fun to get to know Sophia, and what you see here today is Sophia. She's such an encourager. She's an amazing woman, and it's so exciting for me just as a writing friend to see her succeed and see how far she's come. And Sophia, I just want to say I'm so proud of you, and I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to see what's next.
I want to throw in one writers conference hack. This is something I learned after the first couple of writers conferences, is always leave yourself open. One practice I've put into play is try to arrive a little early. See if you can stay a little later. Give an opportunity for those conversations and contacts that aren't scheduled. I always try to have room for a roommate. I will put out a shout late in the conference saying, if anybody doesn't have a room, I've got an extra bed. And I have met friends that way. I've made lifelong companions. I mean, it's not that long, I guess, so far compared to the rest of my life, but it's an opportunity to invite somebody and serve them, but also get a chance to know people out of the context of a structure. And join my Discord science fiction book club. It's fun. My first author that I featured for January is Lauren Salisbury. And she is somebody who needed a room for the night because her roommates were gone and she's from England. And so she needed a place to stay. So I invited her in and we're best buddies now. And she's my first author that I featured. She writes wonderful science fiction that's based sometimes around scriptural stories, but she's awesome. Next one up is Carrie Neitz. That's the inside scoop. Yes, Rhonda.
Yeah, we've been chatting in the chat a little bit about my Romanian background, and I'll just share with you. I think writing has a lot to do with some things I learned on that journey. We went to a little village. The name was Cesnadia, and there's a fortress or a castle on the top of this hill that dates back to like the 11th century or something. And when we started climbing, and it was quite a climb, I got winded, had to stop a couple times. I saw all these rocks, and some of them had fallen off the side and were just there along the path on the side. And finally, we got to the top. There were a lot of big rocks. And I'm like, what is up with these rocks? Because the little ones are down at the top and the big ones bottom, and the big ones are at the top. Well, there's a tradition in this village that men who want a bride start rolling a rock uphill. And the bigger the rock, the more beautiful their bride. Think about this. The bigger the rock, the more beautiful the bride. And this is all just coming to me right now. I've got to write this down. But isn't that like writing? I mean, I said in the chat, I'm defying gravity. I'm rolling uphill, right? And it takes a lot of effort. But I look at some of these great big stones that had just fallen off. They were just there off the path and they had never reached the summit, right? Mm-hmm. And so the proverb, I guess, is just keep rolling. because the bigger your dream, the more effort it takes, but the more beautiful the ending, right?
Yes.
So, I have good news of my own in just the last couple of months, and we're on the recording, so I won't go into all of it, but it takes a long time to achieve some of our dreams, and we'll never get there if we say this rock is just too big.
That's true.
That is great.
Mm-hmm. I just had a couple really quick things. One is that rejection can be a good thing. Sometimes it's God's protection. We've said this before, never forget it. I know it hurts, but looking back, you might be glad there was a no. And then the other thing is just the value of friends. And we've heard this, all along. Ben said in here, he makes it a point to meet at least 3 new friends at any new event. And Sophia, I mean, I'm blown away by your saying you seek roommates, because that would be like, no, I want to be alone. Unless it's Jeannie. Jeannie and I are often roommates at conferences. but it's like, oh no. But I think that's great that you do that. But we've talked about this before, that, when you go to a conference, be kind to everybody. We have heard horror stories of someone just dismissing somebody else, but you never know in 1, 2, 3, 5 years who that person sitting across from you at that table, who they might become. They might be an editor. We've seen it. Look at Vicki Dorstock. She now owns her own publishing company. I met her sitting across the table from her at Blue Ridge when she was still just getting started. So it's like, you just never know who's going to grow, who's going to do something. And not that you use people, but be a friend and get that network started, and just the encouragement and everything. Just be a friend and don't, and you guys know this, you wouldn't do it anyway, because you're also, but yeah, you just never know who's going to become what.
Reinforces the value of writers' conferences too.
Absolutely.
Sophia's story, but we have said that's been a real thread all the way through Writers Chat and stuff. And it makes me think, 2020, I got out of the loop. I mean, we all did because there wasn't any conference. I've been online stuff, I've done a lot of online stuff, but I think it's time to really try to find an in-person.
Get back to conferences or attending in person. And there are a lot coming up. So
And a couple people shared they are going to be Mid-South. Is that what it's called? Mid-South?
yes. Oh, I'm glad. I missed that in the chat. Mid-South. I'm on the board of the Mid-South Christian Writers Conference, and our conference is the third Saturday in March. And I'm sorry, I don't know the date right off the top of my head. And we also have Friday sessions. So midsouthchristianwritersconference.com, I think, is the website. And we are accepting registration. There's about another 3 weeks of early bird pricing. Cynthia Rutti is going to be our keynote speaker. She's a literary agent. We've had her here on Writers Chat. Rhonda, are you doing a workshop? Rhonda's our webmaster.
Yeah.
Rhonda's doing 2 workshops. So yeah, it's a great conference. It's smaller, it's low key, but wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
And what's neat is to meet people we've met here on Writers Chat in person. I see Jan's still here. Jan and I got to meet up in Orlando a couple months ago, didn't we? Which was fun. We had lunch together on that. And that wasn't a conference per se, but it was, it's so much fun to meet people in person. So I would share with you guys who are all on the Writers Chat members page that if you're going to one of the conferences, let's say if you're going to Mid-South, say, hey, I'm going on to Mid-South in March, whatever it is, and say, hey, who else in Writers Chat's going to be there? And try to have a get together, snap a picture,
take pictures and post them on the page.
Post them on the page. I love seeing when we meet up with one another on that way.
And let me just say, it's in Memphis. It says Colliersville, but that's right outside of Memphis. So Memphis is where the Mid-South is located. So
and stuff. So I would share that. If I were you, it just shows that and stuff. Somebody have any other questions for Sophia? We're in about the last couple minutes before we talk about next week. Any questions? Hi.
I don't have a question, but I want to thank you for sharing your story. I am contemplating picking up the pen again and starting back into writing.
That's wonderful.
We missed you, Jan. Pam, what do you got that?
I have a question, Sophia. You won't be my roommate at Realm Makers this year?
I have to tell people I do snore.
I do too, but I have a CPAP that helps, and
I refuse. I'm supposed to.
And
I
then I
love
want
that.
picture of you two together too then.
I want to, oh, can I don't know how to raise my hand.
Hi, Kathy.
Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, hi. Hey, Sophia, I want to thank you
Yes.
for sharing today. And I want to thank you for being you. And Sophia was the person who enabled me to get to my first Realm Makers and have a room. And I am very grateful for that and for her support and for her listening when I sobbed for 2 hours. So she is a wonderful example, and I'm very grateful for her friendship. So
I love Kathy. And I will tell you, she's one of Enclave's stellar writers. When I kept getting rejection after rejection after rejection, I said, somebody's got to want my sci-fi story. And maybe the publishing company that put out a story about giant cockroaches in space will take it. And they did.
they did.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, guys, she's not wrong. It's not really about the cockroaches, but they're a functional part of the world. I'll leave it there and moving on. Sophia's story is much nicer. I like her. I love her story.
Yeah, we get cockroaches here too. Cockroaches about this long.
I'm so sorry.
Well, on that note,
They can fly too.
itchy and buggy and stuff. I don't know.
Can I
Melissa
throw in one
or
more?
what? Go
Can I
ahead.
throw in one more bit of advice that I thought of?
Yes. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to volunteer, even if you don't think you've arrived.
Good.
You're not too low on the ladder to pray. You're not too low on the ladder to carry boxes. You're not too low on the ladder to stuff bags. You know, there's always something you can do to help, to serve others. So offer, ask, and just go forth bravely.
Yeah.
Love that. Great reminder. Great reminder. Thank you for that, for Sophia. Johnny or Melissa, you want to talk about next week while we're on the recording?
Oh, there's Melissa. I was going to let Melissa hold up the book because
I got
it's very blurry when I hold it up.
Oh, I gotta grab it.
I gotta take my blur off.
It actually was
Yeah,
on my shelf.
blurry for me. There we go. Word painting. If someone could put the link in the thing too, if someone can grab it. Word painting, a guide to writing more descriptively. So next week we're going to be talking about this book. Of course, it'd be great if you got a chance to read it beforehand and to participate in what we're calling book chat. So we've got writer's chat now and book chat. But yeah, we're going to be talking about that. It's good for fiction, good for nonfiction, both. So we haven't done a book chat in a while, and that's what we'll be doing next week, hitting highlights of the book. We're not going to try to cover the whole thing. Thank you, Rhonda. There
I
it is.
just put the link. It has a new cover. So
Oh, does it?
It does.
Okay.
yeah, don't be discouraged when you don't see that exact cover.
It
Yeah,
does.
could be.
We're using the old, all of us have the old book, you know, but we talked about it as a new version, so.
I got the revised one. I don't know if it's the revised one with the new cover, but I have a revised one.
Yay, yay. I like our book chats because it shares resources, but always ideas and each of our take on certain chapters and stuff like that. So should be a good discussion next week. So we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Johnny, you want to, I don't know who started, Johnny or Brenda?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. If you're watching the replay, we're really glad that you are and you did. And we invite you, of course, to join us any Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern. If you want to be part of the community live, check out our Writers Chat Facebook page for all of our videos. They all go to YouTube for all the recordings. And if you're not already a member of the Writers Chat Facebook group, you're more than welcome. There are a couple questions to answer. You can do that, and then we're glad to have you in, have you here anytime you can make it. Sophia, thank you once again. That was just gems, and we really appreciate telling your story, and congrats on that contract. And we're excited for the eventual book launch and yeah, just the whole bit. I read bits and pieces of the story. She's an excellent writer, so and I'm not even a sci-fi fan, but it's very good. So I'll read it. All right, is that it for everybody? All right, see you all next week here on Writers Chat.